Over July 26th to 27th, 2025, intense rainfall caused widespread flooding across northern China, with Hebei province and Beijing municipality suffering the heaviest impacts. Relentless downpours triggered red-level alerts, landslides, infrastructure damage, and mass evacuations, making this one of the worst summer flood events in recent years. In Hebei province, the hardest-hit areas were Baoding and Fangshan, where rainfall broke historical records. On July 26th, weather stations in Fangshan recorded an hourly intensity of 145 millimeters per hour, with more than 540 millimeters falling in just 8 hours, exceeding the annual average. Torrents of water destroyed roads, homes, and farmland, isolating entire villages and forcing over 4,600 residents to evacuate. As of July 27th, officials confirmed 2 deaths and 2 people missing. Landslides and flash floods hampered rescue operations as saturated hillsides collapsed. In Beijing, the rural and mountainous Miyun district was severely affected. More than 3,000 residents were evacuated from 149 villages after roads collapsed and access to several townships was cut off. Many areas lost power and communications. The Miyun Reservoir, Beijing's largest water source, saw peak inflows reaching 6,550 cubic meters per second, prompting controlled discharge operations to protect the dam. While central Beijing escaped the worst impacts, suburban districts faced significant waterlogging and traffic chaos. Beijing's Meteorological Bureau issued red alerts for 10 of its 16 districts, with geological disaster warnings covering large parts of the rural north. Heavy rain was expected to continue into July 28th, with up to 100 millimeters possible in 6 hours in districts like Huairu, Pinggu, and Yangqing. Authorities urged residents in mountainous areas to stay vigilant and prepare for possible emergency evacuation. Rescue teams used helicopters, drones, and satellite phones to reach isolated areas. Nationally, the Ministry of Water Resources issued flood warnings for 11 provinces as dozens of rivers exceeded danger levels. Flood diversion zones, designated rural lowlands, were activated in Hebei to protect urban centers, sacrificing farmland and homes in the process. Although these measures prevented worse urban disasters, they renewed concerns about the long-term effects on rural communities and agriculture. This event follows earlier meteorological warnings that northern China faced elevated flood risks this summer due to abnormal monsoon patterns intensified by climate change. Experts note that global warming is driving more frequent and severe extreme rainfall in the region, which has historically seen sharp swings between drought and deluge. The 2023 Beijing floods remain a recent precedent, and the 2025 event underscores ongoing vulnerabilities in both urban and rural infrastructure. While improved early warnings and rapid response helped limit casualties, the damage to property, roads, and farmland is extensive. As recovery efforts begin, attention will shift to rebuilding and strengthening defenses ahead of future storms. In the rural hills of Beijing's Miyun district and Hebei province, thousands of families watched helplessly as torrents of water swallowed everything they had built over decades. In one tragic incident that captured national grief, 31 elderly residents at a care home in Taishitun Township, Miyun, lost their lives when floodwaters surged into the low-lying facility overnight. Many were disabled and unable to flee. Relatives later spoke of frantic phone calls cut short and of arriving too late to help. Officials admitted flaws in the contingency plan. Evacuations had reached thousands across the district, but the most vulnerable were left behind. Across the region, similar stories unfolded. Farmers in Hebei's hardest-hit counties saw entire harvests destroyed in hours. One villager from a landslide-buried community in Chengde told reporters, "We heard the mountain roar, then everything was gone. Our homes, our roads, our livestock." More than 8,000 residents were evacuated from low-lying areas in Hebei alone, many reaching shelters with nothing but what they could carry. Power outages lasted days in over 130 villages. Families crowded into schools and community centers, sharing thin blankets and limited food supplies. Parents comforted children, terrified by the endless rain, while the elderly worried about lost medicines and uncertain futures. Perhaps the deepest pain came from the deliberate sacrifice of rural areas. To protect Beijing and other major cities, authorities activated flood diversion zones, designated rural lowlands meant to absorb overflow. Farmland and villages were intentionally flooded, saving urban centers but devastating rural livelihoods. Residents in these zones have long accepted this role, but the 2025 event renewed heartbreak and quiet resentment. "We lose everything, so the cities stay dry," one farmer said. Yet in the midst of loss, the Chinese people's resilience shone through. Communities rallied immediately. Neighbors helped carry the elderly to safety, shared whatever food they had, and worked through the night to clear debris. Volunteers poured in from across the country. Young people, PLA soldiers, and local party members using boats, helicopters, and even their bare hands to reach isolated villages. In temporary shelters, strangers became family. People organized games for children, cooked communal meals, and shared stories of past floods survived. One evacuee in Miyun said, "We've faced typhoons and droughts before. We know how to endure." This spirit draws from deep history. Northern China has battled extreme weather for millennia. The Yellow River's ancient floods shaped entire civilizations. Modern generations have adapted through better early warnings, stronger reservoirs, and community drills. After the 2023 floods taught harsh lessons, many rural families now keep go bags ready and follow weather apps religiously. The government mobilized massive relief, over $1 billion allocated nationwide, including direct aid to Beijing and Hebei. Rebuilding focuses not just on restoration, but on resilience. Elevated homes, reinforced slopes, and expanded warning systems. Still, as climate change brings more intense monsoons and unpredictable extremes, people on the ground are adapting in their own ways. Farmers are shifting to flood-resistant crops. Villages are planting mangrove-like buffers along rivers. Young people are pushing for greener policies, demanding that rural voices be heard in flood planning. The floods of July 2025 took lives, homes, and hope, but they could not break the human spirit. As one survivor put it while clearing mud from his ruined courtyard, "The water comes and goes, we stay, we rebuild, we carry on." This is the real face of nature's challenges in China. Not just destruction, but the quiet, unbreakable strength of people who refuse to be defeated. First, there's the brutal reality of climate change. Northern China has historically been drier than the south. Its rivers, dams, and cities weren't designed for these sudden monsoon-like deluges. Yet global warming is supercharging the East Asian monsoon, creating wild swings between drought and extreme rain. In just days, places like Miyun received over 540 millimeters, nearly a year's worth. Saturated soil turns minor are especially harsh. Farmers in Hebei and Beijing's outer districts lost entire harvests, livestock, and homes overnight. Many live in low-lying areas deliberately used as flood diversion zones, sacrificing countryside to protect dense urban centers like central Beijing. This policy saves millions in cities, but leaves rural families bearing the heaviest burden: destroyed fields, lost income, and years to recover. One villager in a flooded Hebei County said, "We protect the cities, but who protects us?" The elderly and vulnerable face heartbreaking risks. In Miyun's Taishitun Township, 31 residents, many disabled and bedridden at a low-lying care home, perished when waters rose too fast. Officials later admitted evacuation plans had critical flaws. The most fragile were overlooked amid mass relocations. Across the region, over 80,000 people were displaced, many elderly separated from medicines, families, and support networks. Power outages and cut communications left isolated villages helpless for days. Economic fallout compounds the pain. Beyond visible damage, collapsed roads, buried homes, come indirect losses, disrupted supply chains, ruined crops feeding millions, and rebuilding costs that strain local budgets. Small farmers and rural workers, already on tight margins, face debt and uncertainty, widening the urban-rural gap. Psychologically, repeated disasters take a toll. Survivors of 2023's floods barely recovered before 2025 struck harder. Trauma, anxiety over the next storm, and quiet resentment toward uneven protection erode community spirit, even as people rally together. Adapting isn't easy. Retrofitting infrastructure, elevating homes, expanding early warnings, all cost billions. Rural voices often struggle to influence national planning, and rapid urbanization seals more soil, worsening runoff. These challenges aren't just China's, they're a warning. As extreme weather intensifies worldwide, equity, foresight, and inclusive resilience are urgent. The people of northern China endure not because it's easy, but because they must.